My name is Elizabeth Fimbries. I am in NIFA's Community Engagement Department. We want to give a thank you to Kutak Rock for their sponsorship of this webinar today. We are going to focus on housing authorities, and we have some representatives from across the state. They're going to speak about their role in the communities and give us an update on the challenges that they faced during the pandemic. We also have Susan Polis from our Community Engagement Department working in the background. She'll help answer questions and facilitate on that end. You can use the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen, or you can raise your hand if you want to be unmuted. I'm going to turn everything over to Heather with the Nebraska chapter of NAHRO, and she'll introduce our speakers.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. This morning, we're going to open with Rita Grigg. Rita is the Executive Director at the Fremont Housing Authority. She oversees operations, management, and financial aspects of the housing agency. Grigg graduated from high school in Blue Hill in 1993 and earned an associate's degree in human services from Central Community College at Hastings in 1996. She worked as an activities assistant and then activities director. In 1997, she became executive director of the Blue Hill Housing Authority. Rita had the job until 2010, when she accepted the executive director position in Ord. She worked there through the end of 2015, also earning a bachelor's degree in nonprofit administration from the University of Nebraska at Omaha in 2012. Grigg became deputy director of the Fremont Housing Agency in January 2016. And then graduated to executive director. Thank you, Rita.
Thank you, Heather, and good morning, everyone. So you've heard a little bit about me. I started out at a very small housing authority in southern Nebraska, and then moved up to Ord, and then now out here with growing responsibilities. So I thought I'd give you a little background on what Fremont Housing Authority is before I talk about how we handle things through COVID. So we have the original two towers. We have an 11-story tower and a 12-story tower, Gifford and Stanton. Kind of interesting during COVID because of them being so close with elevators, stairwells, common areas. But we also have, that's our public housing. We have Section 8 program. We have 2 tax credit properties that we actually own now. And then we're building 2 more tax credit properties right now. We expect probably May to start leasing some of those units. We manage Hooper Housing Authority, which is a small housing authority about 15 minutes north of us. We have a food program for our residents. It's a noon meal program. We have a nonprofit, and seems like there's something else I'm forgetting to tell you, but those are the bulk of our, and we have a Ross grant that helps with supportive services for the residents. So in a sense, we were somewhat prepared for COVID because we have all these supplemental services that we provide to the residents. So that was beneficial, having all those things in place to help kind of ease through the pandemic. But I believe last March when I first heard about COVID, everything was so new and they didn't know a whole lot. We were just all kind of hearing about it. The board and I just took a look at things. What could we do to keep the residents safe? We implemented, off the CDC website, 3 Rivers, our local health department suggested the social distancing, hand sanitizers, masks. We put up signs, we put things in newsletters. We encourage the residents to practice the social distancing. And if you don't have to go out right through there, possibly stay home. Obviously as a housing provider, you can't lock people up in apartments or force them to wear masks and that, but we provided a lot of those things just to help keep them as safe as we possibly could, and would educate them on all the different things as we found them out about COVID as the time went on. Overall, we were pretty fortunate. Out of my 17 staff, I had 1 staff member with the COVID. Otherwise, we had a few close calls. We continued to work that whole time. We just adapted the way that we did things. Instead of face-to-face meetings, we would talk with the residents over the phone, through email. They would drop things off and slide it under the door, put it in the rent drop box, those types of things. For a while with our criminal histories, we didn't fingerprint. There was a time that we weren't doing fingerprints. We would send them to the state patrol to be fingerprinted because they continued those things. So a lot of things, in some ways it was business as usual, and in other ways it was just some added precautions just to try to keep everybody healthy and safe. The two towers was probably my biggest concern because the people lived so close together and with the common areas and everything. And we basically weathered it pretty well. Had a few residents with the COVID, but people were pretty good about staying home and not being out spreading it, that type of thing. I think we saw our first big spike in it probably wasn't until in November for the housing authority. And then in Fremont, it kind of spiked at that time as well. So November, December through there, it was kind of interesting times on that. I'm trying to think of different things that you might like to know. HUD, it took, what was it, about a month and a half, 2 months before HUD had put out the waivers that we could use. And so a lot of those things we were already kind of had in place. We continued, research all those things throughout this time, other than inspections. We slowed the inspections down and that, so that just to keep our staff safe and the residents safe. And I had talked to a HUD colleague that I've known for a lot of years, and it was like 5 o'clock, and he said, "Oh, are you working from home?" And I said, how would I run the housing authority from home? And he said, "You're right, Rita, because how do you do maintenance? How do you fix the things that they need?" And I think if we would have panicked, I think the residents would have panicked. If we would have been just like a ghost town and everybody's gone, I think there would have been more panic from the residents. And so I think for the most part, everybody remained pretty calm. We had both spectrums. Some residents were panicked, some weren't concerned at all, and then a bunch in the middle, all between that. So, but it was definitely interesting times. Our food program helped supplement, so they had at least one good meal a day, and support services was able to help, ease some of those fears, get our residents connected with support agencies in our community, which Fremont is a wonderful community. There are so many supportive service agencies and nonprofits, and they do a wonderful job working together to help the citizens of Fremont and then the surrounding counties. And so we are blessed to have all of them. There were food boxes. I'm sure in many of your communities, you received food boxes from the USDA. We would disperse those as well. The commodities kept coming in. Plenty of food. I know the residents were excited about getting extra food stamps, being able to purchase a little bit more food than they might have been able to before. So I think overall things went as smoothly as they could for what we were facing. Are there any questions or anything from anyone?
I don't have any questions at this point, Rita.
Okay.
And if you would like, we can move on to Barry Hall.
Okay.
And we can see if we get any questions later on throughout the presentation.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Rita. Up next, we have Barry Hall. He is the Executive Director at Hall County Housing Authority. Hall comes to Grand Island from Austin, Texas, where he served for 4 years at the Travis County Housing Authority. He also worked at the City of Austin Housing Authority in Texas for 10 years. Mr. Hall began in maintenance for the city, and he went to inspections, and then he became the director. So we'd like to welcome Mr. Hall to Nebraska and to the Hall County Housing Agency.
Thank you for that, Heather. To actually begin, Hall County has 495 public housing. We have somewhere around 800 plus housing choice vouchers, and we manage Hall County and 2 other housing authorities, kind of regional. Hastings Housing Authority and Aurora Housing Authority. Aurora is basically 38 public housing, and Hastings is primarily housing choice voucher. When the pandemic first hit in March, or when we responded to it, actually, it was in July, but when the nation began to respond to it in March of last year, I was actually still with Travis County Housing Authority. And most of the adjustments that we made were similar to what we learned from Fremont. It was very close because Travis County is similar size to Hall County, and sounds like a similar size to Fremont. And so we began to make some of the same adjustments that I believe others did, and they did here at Hall County. So I just checked with my staff that was here at the time, because I didn't get here until November 2020. And by that time, the focus was the on again, off again deadline for the eviction moratorium. And that became a focus because it was never really clear from a national standpoint, from the federal standpoint, on the moratorium. Originally, it was in July, and then it was extended, and then it was going to be December 2020. And then fortunately enough, it was extended again. But here in Grand Island, what happened is that the community became aware of our impact and the important work that we did here at Grand Island through the eviction moratorium. The local newspaper, the Grand Island Independent, they came and they spoke with us, primarily myself, about the moratorium and how we were going to respond to it. Of course, we were hoping that each time that the moratorium deadline would be extended, so we didn't have to deal with mass evictions of individuals who were now delinquent in their rent due to the pandemic because of job loss, job furlough, reduction in work hours or pay. And so fortunately enough, we got to the point where we did not, but the community became aware. And this was an eye opener for me, being new to Nebraska and being new to Grand Island, is that when the community became aware of the threat of mass evictions of their community members, the community stepped up. I got a call from a local church, Resurrection Church, and they said, you know, the amount of debt that you have shared with the community and the number of individuals that may be potentially evicted because of non-payment of rent, I think we can cover that cost. So they started a fundraising campaign. And that fundraising campaign, in a short period of time of about 45 days, raised the amount of monies that we needed to retire all the tenant delinquency and rent for us to stay in. So besides some of the other challenges that we also did have, similar to Fremont, we had to adjust our business activities and model at the time. For one thing, for the first time ever, Hall County had to close its doors to the public on an extended basis from the months of April to June. We cut staff in half, and some worked at home, and some were coming into the office. Such things as research interims and leases, those were done one time face-to-face, and we thought that was the best way to do business. But we found that we were even more efficient when we began to do it via email and telephones. We no longer accepted cash payments, and it became a challenge to our staff to keep our staff safe, because very often, particularly maintenance staff, whenever they did go out, and we had to, I mean, that's the business that we're in, we have to manage the properties. We wouldn't always learn from the residents, and they wouldn't share with us that if they were tested positive or not. And you know, we would ask the standard questions. We would go through the entire procedure that we had set up, but there was still time. So there were one or two individuals that were on the staff that did contact the COVID, and we lost time. And then there was also an incident where one staff member was positive, and there was a group of them that had close contact. So all of those individuals had to be quarantined at that time. So we were working with a skeleton crew, but what we found out through working through email and via telephone and doing interviews and research, that we were actually more efficient with less staff in this situation. So that was a lesson learned for us in this situation, that we could be more efficient in the way we do business We want to continue to do it face to face because that's the business that we're in. We deal with people, and we deal with people that sometimes need more than just a situation where they need some I's dotted or T's crossed. Sometimes they need an ear to listen to them. So we're in that business too, and we will continue to do that. But what we did learn, there is more efficient ways for us to be able to continue work. And so consequently, what we learned through the pandemic is that when there is a challenge, as an organization, we find out we could be more adaptive and flexible in the way we do business. And of course, with the support that we had coming from HUD through the waivers that allowed us to adjust how we do business and still meet all the statutory and regulatory requirements that HUD puts on us as a PHA, we found that we could be very, very efficient underneath the pandemic. So every dark cloud has a silver lining, and we're at the point now to where, not unsimilar to Fremont, we have our biggest concerns were our two towers. We have Golden Towers and Centennial Towers, and those are our high rises, and they're right next to each other. And because they're multifamily, that's where most of our concern was. That's where most of our positive results were. But we found out that we could continue to do business, and we had to, and we could continue to go out and service the residents and our clients the way we need to. Even with the pandemic, we just had to adjust the way we did business. We asked questions whenever we went. Before we went in, we made sure we had a knock and enter type of policy put in place where we checked, had anyone been tested for COVID-19 in the household? Has anyone been sick? And then if there was questions that answered yes or were unsure, then we figured out a different way if it was a work order to be able to fulfill that work order. And so in a nutshell, like I said, we learned a lot about ourselves as an organization through the pandemic, and we found out we can continue to deliver services even underneath the strain of altering the way we delivered our services in the past and a new way to do it.
Very nice. Thank you so much for your input and all that you have to share.
You're welcome.
We'll be moving on now to Joey Nathan. Joey is the Northern Ponca Housing Association Executive Director since 2012, and she has served the Ponca tribe of Nebraska in various capacities for more than 24 years, with more than 17 years of experience in production, supervision, scheduling, and project management. In 2015, Ms. Nathan was appointed to serve as treasurer on the United Native American Housing Association Board for Region 3, Denver Northern Plains Office of Native American Programs. Ms. Nathan is familiar with the operations of Northern Ponca Housing, having served on its board of commissioners for 2 years prior to being executive director, and having served on the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska's Tribal Council for 4 years. She holds an Associate of Applied Science degree in business. Welcome, Ms. Nathan.
Thank you. Good morning. So I'm just gonna try not to say the same things, but basically we're a small housing authority. We have offices in Omaha, or an office in Omaha and an office in Norfolk. We cover a 15 county service area, which is 12 of those are in Nebraska, 2 in Iowa, and 1 in South Dakota. We have 115 units kind of spread out among 8 of the counties. And we do a lot of maintenance, and most of it single family housing. And we do have a 6-plex is probably our biggest. And then we have 2 triplex, and then a few duplexes around the area. So we have 10 tax credits, and we also do, we have a home improvement program. We have a tenant, it's a tenant home ownership where the tenant's able to purchase the homes that they're in So we have rentals in homeownerships going on right now. And then we also have 3 ICDBGs that we're working on. We did receive the competitive grant, so we're doing a lot of development. Our focuses are elderly and disabled. So we're working on a triplex in Sioux City, Iowa. We want to put 20 units in Omaha. And then we also put in for another grant to build a 6-plex in Lincoln. So, you know, as far as that goes, you know, we're just like all over the place in rentals, building, development, pretty much everything that you can think of. We even do home improvement grants. And then when COVID hit, it just, you know, like everyone said, it taught us a way of it gave us a learning curve that we know now we can still work, focus, and get a lot done in less time and not being together. We continue to work throughout the whole process. We are able to work from home. We made sure that we were able to do that. We put PayPal on our website so people were able to pay rent through that, which actually is really working well for us. Then when we got the CARES funding, we continued operations. We just had a few that were out of office and a couple scares, and a couple times we had, or just once, I think we had to close the office completely down, but we still were able to work from home. We were able to do emergency rental assistance, utility assistance. We purchased PPE, cleaning supplies. We did food distributions, and all these sites we would set up, and we ordered tons of food, and we probably served over 300 people, households per area when we would set up. We handed out cleaning supplies to the clinics that we have in Omaha and Norfolk. So like if someone came in and they tested positive for COVID, we sent the boxes home with the families to help them out. And then we also were doing educational material, food delivery, and I already said that. We provided technology support, which we already working with the Connect Home USA program. So before this happened, we made sure that we went out and had our tenants have hotspots, and we purchased them laptops or some sort of device. So the training needed to continue, which that was the hard part, but some cases that was very helpful through this for sure, because most of our meetings are held online, and then we're able to do training online. We also had to start doing emergency shelters, which was new for us. But that came in so handy. We were able to put people in hotels when we needed to. Sometimes they just needed to be quarantined from the rest of the family. We were able to do that quickly. We did buy a few campers that we have put on lots throughout here in Norfolk. Actually, we have 2 of them that we're still doing right now, but we are still paying for hotels as well. And I could not believe how handy that came in some cases. We had one where we had a mom that was pregnant and had a high-risk toddler with 8 other kids at home. Kids, some of them had COVID. They separated really well until the dad came down with it. And then she had to be pulled out of the household and put into a hotel. And then she went into labor. So then she had to call somebody in to stay with the little one. And then the person that came in tested positive. And then we had to separate, when the mom came out of the hospital, the mom from the toddler. So we had 2 units that are 2 hotel rooms adjoining, but they weren't able to go until everybody was clear. But I mean, just that case alone is like, thank God we had all this funding and things, and we're able to do that in a pinch, because I can't believe how many times we were able to turn somebody's electricity back on, or, you know, and through the cold, we had the cold weather, we purchased generators, backup generators. We haven't had to use them, but we just had a lot of supplies on hand that we were able to help out when it was needed. our maintenance crew, we had 17 vacant units within all of our areas. And we just never had the time to get into those units to get them turned. So this was the perfect opportunity for us to focus on the vacant units, and that's what we did. And we were able to get those, and we were taking emergency calls as well. But that's kind of was our focus, was to get the vacant units up and running. And I don't know if anybody else does meth testing, but as a unit goes vacant, we do meth testing. And if they're positive, we actually can go in and clean them ourselves. So our crew is trained to do that, but we hire that out as well, just to get it down to a certain level. And it hasn't been too bad, but I'd say 50% of the time we will have a positive unit that we do have to clean. So I guess, you know, funding sources, we have quite a few funding sources. We deal with, you know, our Indian Housing Block Grant. We have 3 ICDBGs. We have the competitive grant, which is the grant to do a lot of our development. And then we did have the Ross program, which we had some problems and lost that, but we actually applied for that again for the 2020 year. So hopefully we get that back, because that's a very good program, and I'd like to see that come back to us. And then we just received the Treasury funding as well. So we're doing emergency rental assistance, and that has been very helpful. We've probably already have seen over 150 applications. And I think they've probably approved at least 110 of those. So that program is helping out all over, and we're able to serve all of our service areas, the 15 counties, and we serve all tribal members, or just anyone in our service area. And then we also can serve our Ponca tribal members outside of our service delivery area. So right now that program is really going good. And so I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here today. Okay, our fourth speaker is Susan Tatum. Susan has been with the Lincoln Housing Authority for 15 years. In July of 2019, she was promoted to Tenant Service Manager. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk briefly about some of the things that make Lincoln Housing Authority a little bit unique. I apologize, for some reason my internet is being a little unstable today, so if I start freezing up, I'll shut the camera off just to kind of help facilitate that a little bit. But Lincoln Housing Authority, we have housing choice voucher, and we have a few public housing units. We are in the process of transitioning our public housing over we did some RAD, and we're looking at doing some Section 18 dispo vouchers, but we kind of paused that during the pandemic, because in the process of doing that, we do have to have some of our public housing residents potentially find other housing, and we didn't want to do that during the middle of a pandemic. We also have tax credit units scattered across Lincoln in different affordable housing projects that we have, as well as we are a landlord that has a lot of fair market units in the community. And we're consistently trying to increase the affordable housing in Lincoln. We know that it's a huge need, and we're trying to secure land where we can build more apartment complexes. But Lincoln Housing Authority is a moving to work housing authority, which is a little unique and a little bit different than other housing authorities. And basically it allows us to have greater flexibility in the design of our federal housing program. So we can kind of set some different rules to kind of help make things go a little bit easier or smoother. And so one of them that we really use is a simplified method of calculating rent and income. It really helps cut down staff time in terms of getting people housed, and it helps our tenants so that they're not having to collect as much information to bring to us. One of the main goals we have is to encourage families to start work or increase their earned income. And of those participants able to work, 90% of our public housing and 84% of our housing choice voucher participants are currently working. Last year, we had 368 participants that did leave our housing assistance because they voluntarily left because they attained self-sufficiency. So we feel like our program's working and it's helping people get on to housing assistance, and then if they're able to move off of that. And then some other kind of unique programs we have a program called the Homeless Voucher Program, and we work with agencies in the community, different nonprofits here that provide case management, and they place people on a waiting list, and we offer them a voucher. It's a different waiting list than our Section 8 waiting list, and we offer them a voucher as long as they are case managed by these agencies, and they're typically in the program 1 to 5 years, and then the goal is typically they either move off of the program or they transition onto a regular voucher. We do work with the VASH program. So we serve homeless veterans through the Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program. We have 70 veterans that are housed through project-based vouchers at the Victory Park Apartments. And then we have 92 additional VASH vouchers. I'm sorry, my cat has now decided that it wants to move my computer as I'm talking. We also have the FSS, or Family Self-Sufficiency Program. So we have 2 case managers that work with families to encourage them to become financially self-sufficient. Families, the program is a really unique program that's offered through HUD. It is a grant that we receive to help pay for part of the cost of our staff. But families can save money while they are in the program. And during the last fiscal year, we did have 19 participants complete the program successfully and receive $87,000. All 19 received $87,000 in different amounts in escrow savings. And that escrow savings is really based on increases in income as they come into the program, and as their income goes up while they're in the program, there's a match for that, and that's how they earn that savings. So it's just kind of what we're doing is ending up giving them rent back that they've paid being in the program. And out of that program, we track those that we know of that have completed the program and moved on to home ownership. And we know of 216 of our participants have moved on to home ownership. So we're really proud of that. We also have a family support program, and really that's a case manager that we have on staff, and the goal of that is to work to really keep families housed. So they will work with families that might be getting a voucher and really struggling to find housing, trying to connect them with landlords in the community. But then as they are housed, we do run police calls on each unit each month. And as a staff, we sit down and go through those police calls and identify families that have a number of different police calls and kind of figure out what's going on. The family support specialist reaches out to them, asks them if they need help. If they're already working with somebody in the community, they refer them on to that person. Or if they don't have someone in the community, they help get them set up with somebody to potentially help them if that's appropriate. We are the lead agency for the Lincoln Rentwise Coalition. And so we offer Rentwise classes, although during the pandemic, we did have to put a hold on that, but we are actually getting ready to get started with that again. And so it's free classes that people in the community can take to learn to become a better renter. And we partner with a lot of different agencies in Lincoln that help teach the different modules for that program. We have 3 senior properties here in Lincoln, with 269 units that serve individuals 55 and older. Our buildings offer activities and support, which allows our residents to live in affordable housing and receive assistance that keeps them living independently longer. We do have a partnership with Aging Partners in Lincoln, and they receive the Congregate Housing grant through HUD, and they provide case management support to our tenants, and also a noon meal 6 days a week, and then a sack lunch that those tenants can take home for their evening meal. Lincoln Housing Authority does do a match for that grant for Aging Partners. So we give, last year we gave about $154,000 towards that program to keep that going. We have a Reading Matters program, which I'm really proud of. In 2016, we saw a need to get involved in promoting reading and reading out loud to our families to increase literacy. And so we started the program with just some grants that we applied for in the community through our nonprofit, Lincoln Housing Charities. And our community supported us really well. And then we heard about this program called Book Rich Environment, which is a program that HUD is involved with. And there's 20 some housing authorities across the United States that were participating in it. And we asked if we could also participate in it. And we were allowed to do that. And so we are provided with about 4,500 books for free of cost per year that we distribute to our families across Lincoln Housing Authority. And we still purchase extra books with that original funding that we received. And so last year we distributed over 6,000 books to our families. The pandemic made it a little bit more difficult. Typically, we give books to families as they come in for their annual recertification. And then we have special events that we do at our different properties that we hold. Last year did make that a little bit more difficult as we weren't doing in-person certification. So with part of the money we received from HUD in that first round of stimulus money, we were able to mail out books to all of our Housing Choice Voucher participants. So that was pretty exciting. We also did partner with the Lincoln City Libraries, and they gave away books at the different food bank giveaways in the community. So as people would drive through to get food, the Lincoln City Libraries was handing out books that we had given to them for that. And then I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but we do partner with Arnold Elementary School. It's an elementary school here in Lincoln. And every year we give books to all of the students at multiple events. We have a lot of properties in the Arnold Heights neighborhood, as well as our maintenance office is located there. And so we are really involved with that neighborhood. We have a program called the Northeast High School House. We build for the last 27 years. We have partnered with Lincoln Public Schools, Lincoln Northeast High School, for residential construction students to build a home that we do sell at cost, at what it typically costs us to a low-income family that is a participant of Lincoln Housing Authority. We do secure donations from various foundations and organizations to help offset the cost for the family. And so last year we typically build a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a basement that you could put an additional, or sometimes at request, we will put an additional legal bedroom in the downstairs area. But last year we sold that house for $140,000. It's hard in Lincoln to even find a house for $140,000, let alone a brand new house for that cost. So competition is big with that, but we really work with NeighborWorks to help kind of identify what families are ready to move on to housing, to home ownership, and then we move forward with that. We run the Carol Yoakum Family Resource Center in Arnold Heights. So we own that, and we run that program. And we partner with a nonprofit childcare provider in Lincoln that provides affordable childcare on site at the Family Resource Center. And they give a discount to any of our families that want to utilize that childcare service. And then we have a variety of other programs, such as a food truck that comes on a regular basis. We do have clothing and household donations, and a meeting space for different groups there as well. Although again, during the pandemic, a lot of that changed with some limitations that we had. And then along with that, our staff that is in charge of our Family Resource Center also is the lead. We are the lead agency for the Community Learning Center at Arnold Elementary School. And so in that, we provide free before and after school clubs. And we provide a free summer Expanding Horizon program that's about 2 or 3 weeks long. It runs from 8 to noon and it's free to kids. We prioritize to kids in the Arnold Heights area, but we do open it up if we have openings to other children that might be interested in it. And they do amazing, if people are familiar with Bright Lights, where they do different cooking and clubs, those types of things, that's the same kind of programming that we offer at no cost to those families. We also really want to partner with our different agencies in the community. And so we partner with Fresh Start, which is a domestic violence shelter here in Lincoln, and we assist them with over $40,000 a year in assistance towards their program. We pay for part of a nutritional education specialist through the UNL extension. We pay for about $10,000 of the salary every year of that person. And in doing that, they come in and offer nutritional services and education classes to our senior high rises, to the students at Arnold Elementary School. We can utilize them for just our families that we're working with Lincoln Housing Authority. They provide us with newsletter articles, those types of things. And then we also partner with Friendship Home, which is another domestic violence agency here in Lincoln. We provide them with 2 units at no cost for their transitional housing program. And then we do rent an additional 27 units to them for that program, as well as a cash grant of a little over $30,000 a year that we provide to them for their programming. So that's the main things that kind of set us a little, I think, that are a little bit different than maybe some other housing authorities do. And in terms of COVID and how that really affected us, we really partnered with our Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department, and we utilized the risk dial that they came up with. And so once, when this first started, everybody was kind of scrambling, not knowing what to do. The first thing we did is we said, okay, our density in our offices are high. We need to get those densities down. And so we did about a 50-50, where about 50% of staff worked from home while the other 50% were in the office. And we switched back and forth. So everybody worked in the office, but you were only there about 50% of the time. And we stayed that way, except for our maintenance. Of course, our maintenance needed to be there. And so they worked on different ways that they could social distance. And so as the risk dial went into the orange and the red, we continued that. Now that we've come back down into the yellow here in Lincoln, we have increased our in-office hours to about 70%. But we are not doing, in our office, our front doors are open now that we're back in the yellow, where traffic can walk in. We're trying to avoid in-person appointments as much as we can, but we know there's sometimes that we can't, and we have different safety protocols in place for that. We did start doing briefings online. So there's a video that a person watches for the briefing instead of coming into the agency to do the briefing. We had, during the orange and the red and the risk dial, we did stop in-person inspections if the unit was occupied. If the unit was empty, then our inspectors would go ahead and go in. And now that we're back in the yellow, they are doing all in-person inspections. We did stop any contracted work that needed to be done in the properties while, again, we were in the higher risk dial. In our senior properties, we purchased masks for all of our seniors and other cleaning supplies, hand sanitizers for our elevator, by our elevators, all of those things on each floor. When Lincoln Lancaster County decided to do a mask mandate, for our senior properties, we did consider any area outside their apartment to be under that mask mandate, and we did require masks. We had a pretty good compliance with that. There was a few that didn't, and we just addressed those issues as they came. We couldn't force anybody to do that, but we tried to address the issues and come up with a plan for them if that was something they didn't choose. We did have face shields if people couldn't wear a mask. We stopped all activities at our senior centers and van trips just to help with that social distancing. And while we know that that was hard on our seniors, we tried to do door-to-door types of activities. They still did some special meals, but they just had them delivered to the door, those types of things. But in our senior properties, we have almost 300 residents, and we only had 7 residents that we know of in that elderly population that were tested positive for COVID. So we feel like, we did a good job of protecting them, and it was a difficult decisions that we had to make. We also, right away when COVID started, we saw how landlords were struggling because people were unable to pay rent. And so we did, before the first round of stimulus money came through, and the money housing authorities and the communities received to help with things, we set up from money that we make from our fair market units. We set aside about $30,000 to help where landlords could apply for their tenants that were behind in rent, that were receiving a Section 8 voucher, so that we could assist. And we assisted a couple landlords that way. And then the community of Lincoln received a large amount of money to help people that were behind in rent due to COVID related issues. And so Lincoln Housing Authority joined in with that coalition. It was called All Doors Lead Home. And we became an agency that could help tenants apply for assistance. And to date, we have helped over 45, we've helped our Section 8 and public housing and fair market rent, tenants. They have received over $45,000 in rental assistance to help get them caught up. So we've been very active with that and really trying to help our residents get back on track with that. And then in Arnold Elementary School, Dana that does lead that, she was able to do her summer programming. She did it all through Zoom, but we still were able to offer all of those free classes to the different students. So it's just been really kind of making changes as we go and being flexible to do all of that. That's my spiel.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you and the other speakers. And that is one thing, as the Nebraska State Service Officer, I get to see a lot of housing agencies, and they've just really done a great job this past year with all the different changes, making their adjustments and doing what's best for the people that they work with, and adapting their programs and adapting the way they work. And we're just very proud as a chapter that we have such great housing agencies in Nebraska and how hard they work for the tenant. So thank you all so much for speaking and for everything that you have done today. And I think it'll be question time now.
It is, if all the panelists would like to join us. I have 2 questions from the attendees, and then I believe one of our staff is on board and would like to ask some questions. So the first question we have is, do the housing authorities serve those with felonies or drug charges? Would anybody like to cover that?
Our process here at Fremont and Hooper is that we start out with the local police department, and we find or do not find a record. If we find one, then we send that on. They get fingerprinted, sent out to the state patrol. They do nationwide check, and then they also do statewide check as well, and they'll send that back. It entirely depends upon the situation, the way that our policies read. And so with a felony, it would be dependent upon what it was. If we do deny someone, they have the opportunity for an informal hearing or settlement, dependent upon if it's Section 8 or public housing. And so we meet with them. It's kind of their opportunity to show us what's changed in their life and that. And many times people are able to get on our programs through going through that process. So.
I can speak towards Lincoln Housing Authority. We, again, like Rita said, with felonies, it depends really what the felony is about. If it is a drug-related felony or any drug-related charges, and they've occurred in the last 3 years, and that means just not the charge, but if they were charged with something and they were jailed, there was a fine, anything like that, it's the end of whatever occurred following 3 years. If a person completes treatment, they could be eligible for housing assistance at Lincoln Housing Authority. But if the charge is a manufacturing charge or distribution charge, then even if they complete treatment, we still do not allow them to be housed until 3 years following the end of whatever disposition for the charge was. And then for the felony, if it's like an assault on an officer or something like that, typically there's a 3-year waiting period again before they can access housing assistance.
Would anyone else like to weigh in on that question? Along those same lines, then, I have a quick question for Joey. You said that you do meth cleanup on occasion for some of your empty apartments after the tenants leave. How did your staff get certified in that? Is there an organization that housing authorities or staff need to go through in order to get that certification to be able to clean those apartments?
We did do quite a bit of training, and we had people come in. We've also worked with the state directly, and not really so much certified in it, but we're, trained. Most of the time now, we only have a couple people that can actually do the testing here. And then we've been actually hiring that out just because we're short-staffed and it's just too hard for us to get anywhere. But as far as like certified cleaning, they don't really have that, or we haven't taken the classes for that, but we are able to get it down to the numbers that it needs to be for the state. It's at the same, well, actually we're a little higher than the state level, but it's an expensive process, but it makes us feel better that we're putting people in clean units.
That's great. Thank you so much. One of the other questions that we have is, as everyone is starting to open up, what resources are you offering to tenants now? And are you taking more in-person client appointments? And then there's another statement on here that's wondering if you offered produce boxes during the pandemic, but are no longer doing that. Are you no longer doing that as things have opened up and there's more accessibility to food banks and things like that? So if any of you would like to tackle that question, I would appreciate it.
So as things open up here in Fremont, it's my understanding that the mask mandate directive from the City Health Board is going away at 11:59 p.m. tonight, but we're going to continue to encourage residents to wear masks and use the hand sanitizers and all those things as everybody works towards getting vaccinated. We did offer vegetable boxes and the food boxes, the USDA food boxes, and that was through our local Lifehouse homeless shelter, and then the food pantry. They're kind of a combination here in Fremont. And so we were fortunate to have them work with us to be able to offer those. They're starting to meet with people more. My staff is that it's kind of at their own comfort level. I want everybody to be comfortable with what we're doing and that. So I've asked a lot of questions during the whole past year, what's your comfort level? And we just kind of work through that as we go. But it's been working well. And I think we'll see things opening up even more as time goes on.
Here in Hall County, we have basically opened up, but we have continued to mandate masks and social distance, and we continue to institute the sanitary and cleaning that we did during the pandemic. The city of Grand Island, about a month ago, they had a mask mandate in place, but it expired and they didn't renew it. But we continue to encourage, definitely with our staff, mask wearing and with our residents and practice good social distancing. Now, yesterday, the Central Health District did come over and they had an opportunity to provide the Pfizer vaccination for our residents, and it was held at our Centennial Towers. And so we continue to do business as usual, but definitely practice good and safe social distance, mask wearing, and all the protections we had during the pandemic. We continue to until we get to the point where we reach some sort of herd immunity, 70%. And I've even offered to my staff, if we're able to get 70% of our staff vaccinated, because the vaccinations are being offered through the Central Health District for the Housing Authority staff and residents. If we can reach that amount, then in the office area, not when we go out and interact with the residents, but within the office area, we can remove the mask, because we would have gotten to the point to where we reached the magic number of vaccination. And so we basically have opened up business again, and our doors are open, and we're open to the public, and the public comes in. But we definitely continue to practice a good social distance and mask mandates.
Yeah, at Lincoln Housing Authority, we held vaccination clinics at our 3 senior properties. I think we started those in February, and by the middle of March, all residents are fully vaccinated following their 2-week thing. So we had about 95% of our residents in our senior properties that did choose to get vaccinated. And so we are reopening up activities in coordination with our health department. We're reopening all of our activities and van trips with them because we feel like we have a good level of vaccinated folks. And then in our offices, we're slowly trying to, again, we're identifying families that need to have those one-on-one appointments, but our offices are so small, it's really hard to get that social distancing piece in there. And so until we move into the green on the risk dial, we don't plan on starting the in-person all the time appointments again.
We did have a question directly related to that, just asking if you're encouraging your staff and residents to become vaccinated, which it seems that everyone is doing that. So we have been covering a number of topics through the last year or so for everyone to join to get educated on different subjects. And one of the things that we've done is we have done some webinars specifically for property managers and things that they're facing, and some questions have come up from our coworker John Turner, who's also in the community engagement department, and I'm going to invite him to come on and address some of those questions that have come to his mind.
Hello, thanks everybody. And hello, Susan. Susan and I used to work together at Centerpoint back in the day doing community support. Yeah, I was just curious about your experience. And Susan, you already talked about Lincoln Housing Authority, but your experience working with people with mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and really, I guess it's about housing retention. What are some of your efforts to work with landlords and help tenants stay in their units or problem solve, mediate? Do you want to share any experiences you have with that? I know I spoke at a NAHRO conference a couple of years ago, and we talked about this. Barry, I was thinking, does Grand Island actually have a social worker position at the Grand Island or at the Hall County Housing Authority?
John, yes, we actually do. And we recently renamed the position from social worker to resident service coordinator. And she does a yeoman's job of outreach to our residents. She keeps them informed on what we're doing. She puts out a newsletter, and she does a lot of case management. And there are individuals who will come in and have challenges and some of them may be emotional, mental challenges, and she helps with them. And she basically becomes a conduit to point them in the right direction where they can get the necessary help that they may need. And so she partners with many of our community partners on this. But as far as your question is concerned with landlords, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't seem like there's been any real difference or change in the landlords. I mean, we still have the challenges of getting landlords that want to participate in the housing choice voucher program. That's always a challenge. And I know Susan had mentioned the moving to work, and the most recent cohort, cohort 3 and 4, they address some of the landlord issues. Of course, we're not moving to work, but they have some good ideas of how we can attract landlords. But I mean, we have a process in place. I mean, there's the informal review process that a tenant can go through if they're having problems with either landlord or with the program participation, either one. But anything that we put in different because of the pandemic, it's not any different except for some of the waivers that we were able to employ through HUD.
Thank you. I'm on a couple of different committees, the Continuum of Care committees, and then there's a Nebraska Homestead Plan where they're working on Nebraska's efforts to make sure people with disabilities have access to housing. And one of the things that they always are talking about or trying to keep their eye on are mainstream housing vouchers. Do any of you have any experience with increasing your vouchers and including mainstream housing vouchers?
So at Lincoln Housing Authority, we've had the mainstream program for a while, and then prior to the pandemic, we applied for 40 additional mainstream vouchers and were awarded that. And then through the stimulus packages and everything that came through, we were awarded additional mainstream vouchers. So I'm not 100% sure, but it's I want to say it's a little over 100 we have now through the Lincoln Housing Authority. And so, well, that's great news to get more vouchers. It also brings about other challenges as well in terms of staffing and having enough people to be able to issue those vouchers and maintain those vouchers. But through that process, we did add an additional housing specialist to our staff this coming fiscal year, which will start April 1st to help with that. As well as we believe that we should be getting some additional vouchers through this last stimulus package that went through. We just don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet.
Thank you. Yep, I saw something about that too. Lots of vouchers coming down the pike, it sounds like. So Susan had mentioned RentWise. Do the rest of the housing authorities on here, do you have experience with RentWise classes or tenants that go to those classes?
We offer RentWise here at Fremont Housing, but with the pandemic, we didn't offer it last year here at Fremont Housing. We just actually had one not too long ago. I think it was early March that we had our first one in about probably a year and a half, because with the pandemic, we felt like it wasn't safe to meet in close quarters. So we basically had them each take a table. They were probably 10 to 15 feet apart, wearing their masks, and serve them lunch through that. And so it's a wonderful program. I can't say enough about it. We've had it here for quite a few years.
I agree. Yes. It looks like maybe there's some comments in the chat. I think Monica's is she from Sarpy or Bellevue Housing? Sounds like they've got RentWise classes too. Very good. Well, I guess that was about it. I appreciate that. I also hear about the challenges of landlords accepting Section 8, and I know you're all working really hard, and I used to provide direct services, so I'm a big fan of all the work that you do. So thank you for letting me jump in here and talk to you all. And I'll look forward to attending another NAHRO conference down the road.
Well, I don't think that we have any other questions in our chat box. And So I just want to thank everybody for participating today. This was our very first webinar via Zoom. So I understand that while we thought we were in practice mode, it was actually live. So everybody got to see our behind the scenes activities and getting ready for this. So thanks for bearing with us, everybody in the audience. We want to thank Kutak Rock again for sponsoring our webinar and our conferences in the past. There was continuing education credits available for this webinar from the National Board of Mental Health Practice and the Nebraska Supreme Court. If anyone neglected to enter their license number, just get a hold of us. We'll be happy to take care of that for you. And all of our webinars are posted on our YouTube channel at NAHRO Housing. And we hope to see you at the next webinar next Wednesday. So everybody, thanks so much for participating. We really appreciate it.